Yeah, I just want to pass along that essentially the bill you're looking at is set to violate treaties that our tribe has entered into with you as representative of the state of Wisconsin, as part of the greater United States government. And it's essentially very simple. It's the destruction of treaty resources through the destruction of habitat. There's sacred cultural connections, as we've alluded, and in the spirit of a garden, there's notions of sustainable food production that people are dependent on. Really, all people in the Northland are somewhat dependent on it. I think you guys see that by the number of deer tags you sell every year. The fact is, I could describe it. I think the easiest way to say it is I could talk to you about the white-colored frocks that priests wear, but then I'd have to tell you about the whitewater rapids of Bad River Falls and how hydrological fluctuation is directly impacted by the things that you have written in your bill for GTAC. I could talk to you about the silence after homily, but then I'd have to talk to you about the silence of Stand by Carolina Lake and the headwaters of the Bad River that are set to be decimated and obliterated by the mining that you're trying to facilitate. I look at all of you, and you're 75% water. A lot of you are probably 75% Madison municipal water supply. The people here and the people you're going to see come through from my reservation are comprised of the groundwater aquifers that are 1,000 foot deep and deeper. The very waters that you allow GTAC to not have to be accountable for contamination and poisoning, for toxicity. The people that are going to come in front of you are 75% water, the groundwater aquifers, but also from the Bad River. They're part sturgeon, they're part whitefish, they're part trout. And really, when we talk about the destruction of these resources, it's why we sit here and get back to this whole notion of the fact that because we're directly downstream and set to endure the impacts of this project, we view it as an imminent threat. The imminent threat really manifests itself as a form of genocide. Genocide.
Well, may we pose some questions as
yeah,
we need to?
I'll take some questions.
Do you have anything, Senator?
Sure, I have a couple of questions. First of all, thank you for coming down to meet us today. It's an honor that you're here. A couple of questions, and I've spent some time, this is the third hearing that I've been at regarding this, and I've met privately with some of the people, because I don't think anybody on the committee would vote for a bill unless they were certain that the Bad River would remain clean.
Can I hold you to that?
Absolutely.
May I interject? Yes, we are accountable every election, and I say that with all sincerity. I hear this, that we don't understand. I live in the Northwoods also. I make my living off from it. Absolutely, we want to be held accountable for that. Sorry for the
Sorry for the interruption.
Okay. The first question I have, and I can understand either way. I mean, I've met with these people, I'm going to meet with them again, and all the questions I ask are directed towards whether they can be certain that this mine is going to leave both the groundwater and the Bad River clean. Is there any way, under any circumstances, if you meet with these folks, that you will ever be persuaded that this can be a good project?
Well, it's really interesting because what you have in your legislation is all designed to speed up and obscure and muddy and keep unilluminated the very data and the very examination that it would take to come to that conclusion, Senator Grothman. When you look at what you guys have planned for GTAC, you have perks built in there that allow them to keep under wraps the core samples that they already have. You heard a professional, a scientist testify to that they could utilize that to paint a picture for you, for me, so that when you vote and you're held accountable, you have all the data that you need to pass a good, responsible piece of legislation. Right now, that doesn't exist, and that is not what's taking place here. And what's really sad is how misinformation is being accepted as fact and being perpetuated as fact. The Montreal tailings and the notions of the Montreal River being clean, when the very fact of the matter is that's the ironwood formation in inert composition that's in those tailing piles, far different and completely in a different universe and spectrum than the Tyler Formation and the very overburden that you want and that you're talking about. This notion of trucking the Tyler Formation overburden out as potential crushed gravel is pure fantasy. The munitions alone from the blasting of the mountaintop are going to toxify anything in that area. Talk to scientists about the munitions. You probably haven't heard about TNT in munitions and what it would take. I haven't heard Bill Williams talk about that in any detail. But the munitions alone would paint a picture of toxicity that goes way beyond the scientific testimony of sulfide minerals and sulfuric acid composition.
Thank you. Representative Bernard Shaver. I'll come back to Senator Grothman. Go ahead.
Thank you very much for the opportunity to ask another question, and thank you for coming. In your testimony, you mentioned 10 items that you presented to us last year at our public hearings. I'd like to know if you were allowed to have those 10 items be considered as the authors wrote the bill, and I'd also like to know if you were included in the discussions that occurred around writing the bill.
Well, the 10 principles were put forth, and the first one dealt with acidic drainage. I mean, it hasn't been until just recent that the mining company and even mainstream media have been willing to utter the words sulfide mineral or utter the words sulfuric acid. I mean, we're how far into this process? I've seen some of you multiple times now. This whole process hasn't included the tribes. From a treaty rights perspective, you've got testimony from Gliffwick, you've heard testimony from Vice Chairman Mick Isham earlier today from LCO, and there's numerous other tribes on tap to testify to how they've been excluded from any processes. For us, I mean, it's when you look at the obliteration of the headwaters of our homeland, essentially our waters, because they are directly connected to the places that you want to do your project. Or waters meaning both of us, right? There's been exclusion. Any type of consultation would be relative to estate planning and creating our will, I guess.
Do you have a follow-up, Representative? Okay, Senator Grothman, go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to, as far as your relationship with the mining company, has the mining company ever tried to get a hold of you or talk to you?
No, but I listened. I listened as Matt Fifield told me that in a public hearing that they'd hire about 30 locals the first year, and they'd pair them up with 30 locals from their company, and over the first couple of years, they'd have those 60 employees going. And I listened as they compared themselves to the Minnesota Iron Range in their estimate of 700 jobs they'd create. But I also was very puzzled because I listened to the mining company say they're different than the Minnesota Iron Range. They're more advanced, they're more safe. So I don't know if they're different or if they're the same. I think it depends on what's convenient.
Well, I guess this is what I'm trying to get at. I mean, I've attended several meetings, and I'm sure I'm going to attend several more meetings before we vote on this mine. And every time I attend a meeting, I learn a little bit more, think of new questions to ask these people. I would assume, since this company, or I shouldn't say assume, it's obvious that if this company's going to spend $1.5 billion building this mine, and that at any given time the DNR can shut them down, they have a pretty strong incentive to make sure that this is a safe mine. What I'm going to ask you is if you had a chance to sit down with the company and look at their plans for the region and judge or weigh in whether their plans will be satisfied for you as far as assuring you that the groundwater and the Bad River is going to be pure? That's the first question. The second question, have you had a chance to sit down with them? And secondly, is it possible, maybe there'll have to be some amendments to the bill, but is it possible, could you see the day in which you are ever, under any circumstances, satisfied with a mine there?
I've never talked to the mining company. I had a brief conversation with Matt Fifield a long time ago. If I was going to sit down with Bill Williams, and it's highly remote, I'd ask him to bring his 250 core samples of the Pinocchio Mountains with him. But I'd also probably let him know ahead of time that I'd sure like to know why they never did one exploratory drill borehole, even though you guys permitted them for exploratory drilling 2 years ago when this whole process first started. I think the fact of the matter is, it is, like you say, every time you meet with the mining company, you learn a little bit more to ask questions about. There isn't any type of disclosure here. And the fact of the matter is, because it's a shell game. It's a shell game that's represented in that language where you change the state law from will do no harm to is not likely to cause health and human impacts.
Representative Munstead.
Thank you, Mr. Co-Chair, and I'd like to also thank everybody for coming here today. I look forward to coming to your area and investigating further. I would also just like to, if possible, if you could provide the your 10 principles that you were speaking of to all the different committee members at some point.
Yeah, we can definitely get that to everybody again. Thank you.
Representative Clark.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. And as well, thank you, Chairman Wiggins and sir, for coming down today. We know it's been a long trip and a long day. I would like to ask you to follow up. Senator Grossman just made a comment that I think triggered a thought for me, and that is that the DNR, the idea that the DNR could shut down this operation at any time if it proved to be dangerous or damaging. But as you understand what the operation of a mine would potentially do, if in fact a mine is constructed and it's found out after it's operating that it's creating environmental damage or it's toxifying the waters of the Bad River, is there any practical remedy at that point that's going to be possible that would remediate that damage?
Not in my world. The other thing is, maybe somebody can inform me, has there ever been a mine shut down after it's gotten into the ground because of the health and human impacts on surrounding communities? I bet you the answer is no. And you have many provisions in that bill that our lawyers could speak to at length that really take away the teeth of the DNR to shut down anything. I think when I looked at it, economic impacts and money trumped anything related to human health and environment. That's genocide, fellas.
Any other questions, Representative Clark?
No, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Representative Bernard Shea.
My question goes to alleged counsel to follow up on both Representative Clark and Senator Grossman's question about stopping a mine and if there is something found to be a problem. So I'm wondering, is there a stop action provision in this, or are we expressly not allowed to stop the mine based on this bill?
There is a stop action provision in the bill, however, it's different than what apply under current law. And I don't have my fingers on the provision right now, so I'll speak generally about it. Under current law, the DNR can issue a stop order. I believe, generally speaking, under the bill, the DNR can ask that the Department of Justice institute an action to prevent further activity at the mine under the bill.
Is there any way to know how long the Department of Justice has before they have to make a decision so that whatever's going on that's going wrong continues to go wrong? I mean, would we allow a grease fire in a restaurant to continue for an extra length of time until the DOJ comes in and tells us, oh yeah, that is a bad thing to have happening?
Editor editorial. Any other? Representative Kavinga.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is probably just a follow-up for Lunch Council. What do we have in place where if for some reason something terrible did happen, and let's say the mine went under, we've got issues that we just found, what do we have in place to protect the taxpayers and to protect the locals, to make sure there's financial resources there to take care of the contamination? What's built into the bill for that? Is there a requirement?
Yes, and I went into it in a little more detail before, so to do it in more of a summary fashion now, there's a bond requirement to ensure faithful completion of a reclamation plan, and that does not release, the obligation to have that bond in place is not released until after the reclamation is complete. And there's also a requirement that the operator show proof of responsibility for long-term care of the mining waste site, financial responsibility, and that extends at a minimum to 20 years beyond the closure of that mining waste site under the bill.
Is the bond, and I apologize, this is the bond requirement, dollar amount specified?
Minimum of $5,000, but the amount can be established by the department, which far more than
I guess I'd just like to say about that, like you heard Councilman Connors pointed out that USGS will show you the groundwater from the Pinocchio Mountains are on 50-year recharge. It takes that long to get to our aquifer systems where we're tapping them and drinking them, having them become a part of us and us become a part of them, right? The notion of 20 years is unbelievable. It represents a language chasm, and I've mentioned this in the past. I listened to Bill Williams, president of GTAC, talk about engineering his way out of problems with the environment, setting up containment systems. I look at those man-made constructs, and maybe some of even the most beautiful fantasies that Mr. Williams may have in his mind about containing the 434 million cubic yards of overburden containing sulfide minerals. And then I tack on the word perpetuity. And perpetuity, forever, right? GTAC going to be around forever? Absolutely not. We plan on being around, and I'm sure you do too. There are copper mines in South America that are still leaching acid, and it's been 2,000 years. That's what we're talking about here. And that kind of language is not, you know, I'm sorry to say, the type of language that you're going to be talking when you meet privately with these mining companies. It's forever.
Were those reclaimed mines that you're referring to?
Describe reclaimed.
That had a system put in place.
If the sulfide, if the sulfide minerals are there in the form of crushed pulverized rock down in a talcum powder, forever. What's reclaimed? A management system, a bearing wall that's supposed to endure forever, erosion, water, rain. I mean, the obliteration of the headwaters in a watershed system is catastrophic. It is catastrophic for the ecosystem, which ultimately is catastrophic for the human population that is dependent and interconnected with it. That's what we're talking about. And it's forever. It's not 20 years of having a $5,000 bond available. Well, minimum.
In reference to a question I was asked earlier about contacting the tribes, did you get the letter from my office in early December when I sent a letter? I sent a letter from my office asking for a meeting. Do you know if you received that?
No, I did not receive that.
Okay, because I did send a letter to the tribes asking for a meeting, and I can show you a copy of that letter. It's from early December. Clarification from legislative counsel.
Yeah, on the dollar amounts, I should provide more detail. There's a bonding requirement for exploration, there's a bonding requirement for bulk sampling, and there's a bonding requirement for mining. whichever phase of the process or whichever activity you have to be in. It's a $5,000 bond for exploration. That's generally just drilling the boreholes. It's a $5,000 minimum bond for bulk sampling that can be increased by the department if the department believes that more than that is necessary to reclaim the bulk sampling site. And there actually is not a dollar minimum or a dollar maximum on the bond for reclamation of the mining operation. It is, however, required to be reviewed annually and to be set at an amount that would cover the area that's already been disturbed, the reclamation of that area, along with what will be disturbed in the following 12 months.
One final question, Representative Bernard Shaver.
Thank you very much for the latitude. Just to try to follow up on what Ledge Council just told us, there also appears to be a provision in the bill that caps or limits the amount of personal injury and property damage protection that's required. And also it looks as if current law allows us to have an irrevocable trust so that we know that the company has enough money to take care of problems, but this bill does not require any irrevocable trust agreement. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So that if there were something really egregious that happened, there's no way for us to make sure that the company is required to fix it.
So under current law, there's three means by which the company maintains financial assurances. The two that, under current law and the bill, the two that I've explained, the bonding requirement for reclamation and the proof of long-term financial responsibility for long-term care of the mining waste site. But under the bill, the third, the irrevocable trust is not required as it is under current law.
Thank you.
Thank you. Jim, thank you very much, and thank you for your service to your country.
You're welcome.
Next, we will hear from some of the members of the Red Cliff Tribe: Marvin Defoe, George Nuago, and Brian Bainbridge.
I want to say thank you for listening. I know it isn't easy to hear such an oppositional view when you're working diligently like that, but at the same time, it's where we're at, and I wanted to say thank you for your time.
You're welcome.